GCW's You Wouldn't Understand 2025 looked okay on paper. You had solid workers, some interesting matchups, and a card that should have been at least passable. But the execution of this was just completely flat across the board. So in this video, I'm going to break down why this show didn't go as smoothly here. But here's what got me the most. The matches that were supposed to be the biggest draw of the night, the ones that should have stood out and made this show special, ended up being some of the biggest letdowns on the entire card. So let's start with those death matches. And yeah, they were supposed to be the marquee attractions that set this show apart, but it completely fell flat in a way that left me scratching my head a bit. Dr. Redacted versus Slade especially felt like something that legit went wrong backstage or even during the match. I gave this one just only 2 stars because it was over before it really even started. Like there wasn't enough time to build to anything as far as drama or intensity. And then Cycloplay versus Brett Bronson, which I rated 3.25 stars, had more promise and actually delivered some solid action, but even that felt like something that was left on the table. I just expected just a bit more from a death match that should have been pushing the boundaries a little bit more. So when your specialty matches, the ones that are supposed to be the draw of the show, fall flat like this, it kind of sets a real negative tone for the rest of the card. But here's what made it even worse. Because those death matches didn't deliver in a way that I wanted to, it made me realize that this show had way bigger problems earlier on. Especially with some matches that had no business being on the card at all. And that's what we need to talk about next. Effy versus Shotzi for the GCW World title should have been a match that mattered. But instead, it felt like pure smoke and mirrors. 2 stars is what I gave this. There was no real substance of what they were doing. Just movements and spots that didn't add up to anything meaningful here. Now Effy, he retained with the Rough Rider, but it didn't feel like a hard-fought victory that made you believe in Effy's title reign, which has been the story of Effy's title reign. Falling flat, just like the match, was just going through the motions just to get to the finish. So when your world title match, the one that's supposed to carry some weight and mean something, leaves you feeling empty and unconvinced, that's a massive problem. And that problem only gets worse when you look at the rest of the card and realize that most of the other matches had their own issues too. Matches that weren't just underwhelming, but were actively bringing down the show in ways that made you question why they were even booked. And that problem gets even worse when you look at the mid-card matches. Because then, you've got matches that are just completely forgettable from top to bottom. Matches that not only fail to entertain, but actively make you question why they're on the card at all. Maki Ito versus Kerry Morton is a perfect example of this. I rated this one just 1.5 star because I simply just didn't care for any of this. There was nothing pulling me in, no reason to invest in what was happening, and by the time it was over, I already moved on mentally. And then you had Danhausen versus Priscilla Kelly, which was even worse. I gave that one just 1 star because it was genuinely a nothing match, a complete waste of time, 0 reason to exist. So when you're stacking your card and you got matches that are actively draining the energy instead of building momentum, you're pretty much just sabotaging your own show. These weren't just misses. They hurt the show and made the show feel longer and more tedious than it needed to be. But even beyond these complete whiffs, there were matches that had real potential, but just got cut short before they could actually go anywhere. Matt Tremont vs. Teriyaki had everything it needed to be as far as a solid wrestling match, but it just didn't get the time it needed to really breathe and develop. I gave this one just 2.5 stars because while it was technically solid, I just kept wishing it went just a little bit while longer. There was clearly more there, more they could have built, more intensity that they could have had, but the match just ended right when it felt like it was starting to hit. Then you had Anthony Green versus Ray Jazz having the same problem, except worse. I rated this one just 2 stars because it felt rushed before it really even got going. Like they were just finding the rhythm when the finish came out of nowhere. So when you got matches with workers who can deliver something, but they're being shortchanged on time, it creates this frustrating pattern where you keep thinking about the potential instead of being satisfied with what actually happened. The problem is that the time constraint issue hurts the whole show, making everything feel cut short and unsatisfying. But here's the thing. There were a couple tag team matches on this show that actually showed what could happen when you give people proper time to work. Joey Janela and Marcus Mathers versus Griffin McCoy and KJ Orso, I thought was a really good match for the time given. I gave this one just 3.25 stars. And Ricky Morton with Bustin' in the Brain versus Vandal 48, I thought was even better at 3.5 stars because they actually got decent time to build something meaningful. These matches shows what you can do when you let workers have in the room to operate here. They can deliver compelling action that makes this show feel worth watching at some points. But here's the problem. 2 solid tag matches, no matter how good they are, just aren't enough to save an entire show when everything else around them is falling apart. You can't have 2 good matches carry a show when you got forgettable mid-card stuff, a weak title match, and death matches that don't deliver to your expectations. The good stuff gets buried beneath. So even though those tag matches gave some hope, it came too late in a card and it was just outnumbered by too many other disappointments. When you step back and look at the full picture of what GCW You Wouldn't Understand 2025 actually delivered, there was a clear pattern that explains exactly why this show didn't work for me at all. GCW You Wouldn't Understand 2025 looks solid on paper, but the execution across the board was just consistently flat in almost every way. The championship match felt empty. The death matches didn't deliver the impact that I think they should have. Multiple matches were completely forgettable, and even the solid ones got cut short before they could even build up. So when you put all of that together, what you're left with is a show that fails to justify its own existence. There's no real reason to go back and watch this, and whatever good moments there was, it just got buried underneath all that disappointment. That's why I'm giving this show a 6.5 out of 10. It's the definition of a really blah, forgettable show that I just can't recommend. It's not offensively bad in a way that's entertaining. It's just mid. It doesn't stick with you. It doesn't give you anything to remember. Skip this one.